We'll do a quick round of intros, and then we'll go right into it. We're basically going to use a framework, which if some of you have been to business school, you may have heard of the 4 Ps. We're going to look at product, placement, people, pricing, and promotion as a way to kind of frame the discussion. So I'm Adam Grossman. Like Corey said, I was the CEO and founder of Block 6 Analytics, which was acquired by Excel Sports Management a couple years ago. Founder of the Revenue Above Replacement newsletter and moderator of the panel. So we'll go down the line and then we'll start with our first question.
Mike Salvaris from Pro League Network. Hi, everyone.
Jeremy Stein, co-founder and CEO of SportsGrid. We're the #1 free ad-supported TV network in sports.
Chris Bevilacqua, co-founder and CEO of Simplebet.
Bill Yucatonis, co-founder of Pro League Network.
So I mentioned kind of the 4 Ps that we'd be looking at, and with pricing probably be the 5th P. But let's start, and Chris and I were talking about this a little bit off stage, but on the product side. So from a growth perspective, traditional betting is focused on certain types of bets, at least when it was getting started, and particularly you guys are probably all familiar with this in terms of simple bets, in terms of overall outcomes of games or specific individual performance metrics, but the product universe is growing and rapidly expanding. So from your all perspective, what are some new products and new ideas for products that you're looking at to expect to grow the audience from an iGaming perspective? We'll start from right to left, and then we'll go left to right on the next question. So Mike, if you want to start.
Yeah. Well, I think that we look at product in terms of content for an OSB, and in terms of how they can drive growth through different product in terms of specific content. At least from our perspective at Pro League Network, it's around supplying sportsbooks with different types of content that serve 2 purposes. One is meet or attract different niche audiences or specific audiences that sportsbooks aren't reaching today for that type of content. So perfect example would be, we have a sport which is called the Pro Carom Tour, which is specifically aimed at a Southeast Asian audience. So bringing that sort of content that's bettable to a sportsbook unlocks a different demographic and a different types of growth on the content. And the second aspect is around scheduling or having content, the availability of content at different times. I mean, if you think about content being always being on a Sunday afternoon, really monetizing those Mondays, Tuesdays, afternoons, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Like there's a big opportunity there with the right type of content for sportsbooks to grow share.
Yeah, Mike, I think this is for the rest of the panel. We're already going off the schedule that I just laid out 2 seconds ago. But we talked about this in our initial phone call, but in terms of this goes to place, how are you guys also collectively seeing different international markets and different international markets responding to new products? In particular, do you see domestic audiences looking towards international sports and some new novel bets that are present in international markets as an area of growth? So I'll use that, and we can keep going, but use that as a frame going forward too.
Look, just to answer that question directly, we are a content company. We cover any sport that has a betting market. And we do this in partnership with the operators who integrate natively into our content. And we do see a large appetite for international sports, particularly soccer, rugby, and a lot of sports that happen natively in the LATAM market. I think that you're going to see a very large focus on Brazil and some of the other emerging markets.
Chris?
Yeah, and I guess I'd follow that. I mean, obviously we're all on the content side, one way, shape, or form, and we, as a company, we decided early on that we were going to double down on the U.S. market and U.S. sports, and we've built out, all the main U.S. sports, and recently added Live Golf, which is obviously more of a global sport. So most of the products that we've seen, we have distribution of our U.S.-based sports like NBA, NFL, MLB, college football and basketball. We just added NHL this past week, which is also a global sport. But our distribution, like Bet365 is one of our customers, and they're global. And so there's pockets of those types of sports that are followed, like in Europe and South America. But I think in order for us to, as we've concentrated on the U.S. market and we made a lot of traction there, I think the next move is to go more global and have sports offerings around soccer and cricket and other sports like that.
Yeah, Chris, Just before we go to Bill, can you just, Simplebet obviously as a concept is an iteration on kind of new product ideas. Can you give a little more background about Simplebet and kind of some of the product offerings?
Yeah, like I was telling you, so here we are a month or two away from the 6th anniversary, right, of PASPA getting repealed. And we started the company a month before PASPA was repealed. So we've been at this for 6 years, and we had a thesis that I think is largely proven out, that U.S. sports were going to be different and that the emphasis on the product side was going to be around in-play. So creating a technology product that enabled live in-play betting around what we call micro markets, so betting on every play and drive in a football game, pitch and at bat in a baseball game, shot in a possession in a basketball game, and creating literally millions of markets to bet in real time, sort of gamifying the wagering experience. And we've seen that grow very rapidly. And, on the one hand, we're still early, right? There's 6 years into it, there's roughly 10 million MAUs right now in total. And 70% of them are with 2, and 90+% are with 5. So, in order to sort of grow the whole pie, right? And what's super exciting is ESPN's entry, right, through ESPN Bet with Penn, bringing a casual fan and a casual user. So how do you go from 10 million MAUs to 20 or 30, right? And I think a lot of that's going to come through marketing and creating a product that is more accessible to the casual user, easier to use, removing all the friction. And, I think we're at the really, really early stages of what we'll see in innovation in the coming years.
Bill?
It's a good jumping point on the casual fan with just international and end product, quite frankly. We think a lot about watch and wager in everything that we do, and we think about who the audience is, whether it's a domestic audience on the same time zone or international. We're very focused on thinking about localization, day parting, who's consuming the content, et cetera. And this panel is interesting in the sense that Mike and I seek out these unique sports or create them in our labs and regulate and make them available for betting. Jeremy's company does a great job with creating fandom, right? The storytelling, helping fans know what to bet, when to bet, be able to look at something in the moment and be able to make a somewhat intelligent bettable decision. And obviously Chris's company, the whole in the moment live bet as you watch it is really where the industry is going to grow. And I wish the operators would figure out how to bring all this together more efficiently and effectively, because really no matter the sport, if you trust the pieces of the model here, whether it be on the league side or their shoulder content and creating that fandom, or on Chris's side and enabling the bets, it's really this perfect storm of bringing it all together. And using like Karam as an example, or even with Bet365, that we work with them as well as one of our customers. And this past Monday, we had our second World Putting League professional mini golf event of the year. Several books carried, including Bet365, traded internationally. And so you've got people all over the world. We had bets taken as far as Australia, et cetera, on a sport that you could laugh at, but we've broken it down where bets are in the moment. We over under on next hole in one, so you don't need to know the 25th person on the mini golf leaderboard. It's about kind of what's next. And again, there's like a perfect storm of technology and types of content here that is what's going to make international operators or operators in general grow.
Yeah, Bill, I want to build and then come back around on that point. We talked a little bit about derivatives of the iGaming market, particularly media content. You're saying an operator, and Chris obviously mentioned ESPN's entry into the market where it's mixing media content, betting together. So from your perspective and from the collective group's perspective, how do derivatives help grow the market share potential, and what is from your perspective, the answer of doing that effectively?
Yeah, I think it's consistency with execution on that. I think listen, we all watch NFL pregame shows or pick your big four, and it's very focused in that moment, right? You have your pregame, it builds up excitement of what you're about to watch, there's pre-match markets available, and then game goes on, and you're betting live from there. And then, Sunday's over in NFL season, then what, right? And then you don't really feel that experience, on other parts or other sports. And back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, whether it's, mini golf, carom, we've got a 3x3 basketball league we're launching with Kevin Garnett next month. And so there's a lot of different sports. And, mini golf was 1 o'clock on a Monday. We do that very deliberately because there's a gap in the calendar, there's white space there for operators, et cetera. And so, being able to package that consistency of, creating rooting interest, have content that's well thought about the type of markets that you offer, having technology enable that watch and wager experience, end to end all the way through to the operator, doing it consistently, that's really important.
Chris, do you have any?
Yeah, I think, like Bill was just saying, I mean, I look at what you guys do, right? I sort of think the analog is, you think about like Netflix, right? So Netflix started really as a catalog business, right? And they acquired a bunch of customers, and they took a lot of long tail content, not unlike professional putting or what have you. And then, eventually, it's sort of like the sports betting industry, and to some degree, right, it's not a surprise, right? It costs so much to get a new customer, right? Because everybody's selling essentially the same product, right? And then, Netflix said, well, we got to own something that no one else has, right? So they did House of Cards and Orange is New Black. And then all of a sudden, right, they were able to grow out because they had product that other SVODs didn't have. And similarly, like in sports betting, I think that, we've seen a little bit of the differentiation on the product side through SGPs, right? FanDuel minted that, DraftKings finally caught up, and now everybody else is trying to find a product that differentiates, right? And so I think some combination of product differentiation, better technology, less customer friction at the top of the funnel, getting the casual fan in, all that package of stuff is what's going to grow the whole ecosystem and bring new customers in rather than the existing base getting traded off because somebody paid more money to get a new customer, take it away from another. Like that's a game that's not going to last much longer. It already is, moving away from that. So I think product differentiation and innovation and, I'm sure we'll get into low latency video being paired with the in-play gaming experience, which is where all this is going to create all these new and differentiated products.
Well, I guess we should get into that. We get into that right now. But Jeremy, I also wanted to get your perspective, particularly from a data perspective, data insights. How do you think about data insights? Obviously that's a core piece of your business in terms of making fans smarter. So how do you think making fans smarter potentially increases the audience that's available for sports betting? And does low latency help from that perspective?
Low latency is incredibly important, and that's something that we've had a great focus on at SportsGrid. When we first began, our latency was about 4 minutes. We've gotten that down to under 40 seconds. And if we're talking about new products like in-play wagering, delivering the information to the customer in a method that's actually going to allow them to place a bet is very important. It's obviously not a good experience if you're talking about a play that happened 4 downs ago.
Exactly.
So that's a big focus of ours. And what we're talking about in every single respect here is product marketing. We're talking about bringing customers into the tent at a lower customer acquisition cost. And one of the ways that we do that with data is distilling data down to a decision that is easy for the customer to understand. And I actually think that mini golf is a great example. We don't think about that, as, this massive sport, in the United States, but it's something that the customer can easily understand. Everybody can understand, oh, is this a hole-in-one or not? And that's why we always hear about very popular prop bets in the NFL, like the coin toss at the Super Bowl or the Gatorade. We need to build products as an industry that is very easy for the consumer to understand, and that's what we do with data. We try to dumb down everything that's happening at a sportsbook into something that a consumer can easily make a decision on.
Could you give an example of how you're dumbing it down, so to speak?
Yeah, so look, sports is data. You don't need a body to recap last night's Yankees game, and you certainly don't need one to predict tonight's Yankees game. So for example, we can take data points that the wind is blowing out 10 miles an hour to right field. How does that impact the over-under and the home run prop, for example? And we'll try to explain that in a very easy to understand manner to the consumer and say, hey, maybe this is an intelligent bet you should make.
And Mike, kind of building and Bill too on the Kareem, is that right? The game. Karam on the international perspective. That kind of goes a little bit maybe against the point of mini golf, right? People understand kind of what mini golf is. I'm not sure people, and I just couldn't even pronounce the name of the other sport. So
Yeah.
is that so? From your perspective, do you think, particularly in the context of fans, expanding the universe of potential offerings, is that an issue in terms of people not understanding?
Yeah, I don't think that's a one-size-fits-all, because I think, as PLN, we take a portfolio approach. We've got 13 or so leagues where, some of them are very demographic specific and cater to a certain niche audience. And there, I think it doesn't have to appeal to a casual bettor. It doesn't have to appeal to, your average 22 to 34-year-old male. They don't have to understand it, but the niche that really likes that really loves it. And it's a sizable niche, and it's an interesting niche for a betting operator and for the sports wagering community. So I think there's definitely buckets of content and sports that are like that. Carom is one. I mean, World Surfing is probably another example where it's, people kind of watch it. It's not really something where people will feel, the average person would feel comfortable placing a bet. So that's bucket one. And then bucket two, I think, is more generalized sports that appeal to a casual fan, and because they're just purely entertaining. And that could be mini golf because we've played it before, or like we've got this other product, Car Jitsu, which is jiu-jitsu in a car, which is just entertaining. I mean, it's you watch it and it's, we generate
Car Jitsu, right?
Car Jitsu, yeah, which, we get over 10 million impressions a month on social. Most of it is, or a lot of it is Car Jitsu, and it's just a very entertaining sport. And so I think, there's going to be buckets of content like that, which is interesting to a casual fan and happens to be bettable and is very engaging. So I just don't think that there's one size fits all. And I think for an operator, or if you're thinking about content, you really have to have the hats on as to who am I trying to target with this content? Am I going to have 60-70% of my content in a bucket that's general pop, casual fan? Am I going to have 10-15% reserved for niche audiences? And how I promote that and how I surface that in the product is going to be important.
Yeah, and Chris, I wanted to go back to one point that you brought up, which I think is a common question or concern in the industry, is the cost of acquisition, cost of customer acquisition. If we're talking about growing the audience, obviously there's a cost associated with that. And we'll start with Chris and then kind of work our way around. What do you see as, is it new product? Like, what do you see as a way, particularly given the market as you described it, where there's two dominant competitors and 90% are kind of within 5 universe? How do you see customer acquisition costs impacting the growth of the overall market?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question. You can't keep trying to get customers, right? $700, $800, $900 a customer,
right?
And you're just switching around. And like the way I think it's going to happen is through product innovation. And there's a whole slew of things. I mean, Jeremy just mentioned like this whole idea of using data for like contextual betting in real time, like making sure that you surface the right opportunity to the right user at the right time. And excuse me, what really is happening, like if you look at the media industry, right, it's moving from what used to be a mass media into now personalized media. And I think through all the personalization, which data will drive, right, being able to create contextual opportunities, but all the interactive opportunities that result from wagering on, in-game e-commerce opportunities, all the other things that go on around a social experience, right? And I think the technology has sort of created this new whiteboard that a lot of innovation is going to occur with all these new advances in technology, and that will lead to personalization, so I get what I want, what I'm interested in, when I want it, where I want it, on what device I want it, with all these ways to interact with it, with wagering sort of being at the center of it. And you just think of how all the leagues have architected, we could have a whole other session on how data and data rights work, and how the geniuses and the radars of the world work. But the idea that you can take a bunch of money, right, for for data rights reselling, and you're trying to get $8, $9, $10 billion out of media. That's where all the money is, right? So you want to create an ecosystem where data is driving innovation and engagement products, because the vast majority of the wealth is going to be created through media consumption. Like, how do I get more people to watch my live content for longer, engage deeper with it? And how you mix that up with, or mix into that, the product innovation. And there was 55 or 60 online sports betting consumer-facing businesses now, and 5 of them control virtually 90+% of the customer base. You want that to spread out and drive and motivate innovation and investment into creating something that's new and different that someone else doesn't have. Like I was saying earlier, what's the house of cards for BetMGM? I see Matt sitting over there. What's the house of cards? What's the Sopranos, right, for Rush Street? Like, who's going to come up with what next?
I think it's Card-Jitsu is the Bill.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor Karam, but it's a great example to your question. Though it's a unique sport, there's a shitload of people that care about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. I think it's like up to 20 million, I read recently, play it competitively at some level, competitively in India alone. Yeah. And not counting the U.S. expat or other markets. And so we may not be familiar with it from an everyday sport, but within a certain culture demographic, it's the pickleball of some sense, of some markets. And so, Mike and I were deliberate about seeking that sport out, because we knew back here domestically in the U.S. that from an operator perspective, generally speaking, it's a demographic that's not being targeted, right? And so when you think about new customer acquisition, if you've got a sport that's pickleball-like to them, that they can watch, they understand it, it's approachable, it's bettable, et cetera, and you can go to DraftKings or MGM or whomever and bet it, that's a great closed loop. And oh, by the way, if it's on a Tuesday afternoon or evening or whatever the right day part is, for how we produce that sport, it has that accessibility of not diluting audience as well, or cannibalizing the acquisition. And same with our other sports, Card-Jitsu and even mini golf. It's crazy outside looking in, but again, very deliberate from Mike and I. Mini golf was really deconstructing golf and saying, okay, there's a lot of people that bet at golf. Yeah. We're not going to create another LIV or PGA Tour. That makes no sense. So what's the right way to deconstruct it? And so we created a professional mini golf brand and got it regulated. We have a long drive brand that we're launching. It'll be simulator-based, similar to what Rory and Target are doing, but again, just focus on long drive. And so deconstructing sports of taking something where there's an audience that cares and driving it in. And so again, back to the operator side, these are opportunities to drive new customers in uniquely on a sport that, maybe they weren't necessarily a long-standing mini golf fan, but they got it. It's interesting. It's fun. We're deliberate on the type of markets that we offer, we put up there, and we pass through to the books. And so there is thoughtful thinking on how we go about it.
Well, Karam is 20 million plus one fan, so now I'm official.
Exactly.
You've convinced me. But Mike, just to kind of close the loop, you said it. Bill just said intentional products, betting markets. Can you give an example of like what that means in this context? Like how did you guys come up with the intentional betting markets, or what you were thinking about from a product perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of experimentation, because I think when we first started, we were offering, detailed props on every player in every market. And I think you have to bring it back to, it's a casual fan and it's a casual product, right? And so I think that the casual product, you maybe on a betting menu you only need, and right now we offer like 4 or 5 bets on a particular product, because it's casual, and that's the level that most people want to get to and engage with in a sport. And by the way, that's fine, because they're still betting, somewhere between on average $24 to $48 a bet, which is still fine, you know what I mean? And I think that there's a tendency, I think, sometimes to overcomplicate things and to offer to keep. We were guilty of this initially, but I think you bring it back to the casual fan base, and the simpler bet types and simple bets for the casual audience seem to be resonating.
Yeah, and this is our final question, and just for the audience. We're not going to have question and answer from the audience, but feel free to come up to us after and ask any questions that you have. And starting with Jeremy, last one is around people. And Mike, you mentioned there's a specific demographic, or at least a stereotype demographic that sports betting operators, young males particularly. So Jeremy, starting with you, and then how do you expand beyond that core demographic to other demographics to get them involved in this universe?
So there are a few ways. First, there's brand diversification. You can build new brands to target specific demographics. You can do product differentiation. And, I'm going to kind of answer this in a CTV framework. It's marketing efficiency, to be quite honest with you. We hear a lot that marketing budgets, they're shifting away from traditional linear television to connected TVs. Yeah. And the reason that is happening is because you can, for once in that world, actually measure the effectiveness of a campaign. You can see with great granularity where your dollars are going and how they're targeting a specific customer. So instead of producing a Super Bowl ad that the entire country is going to see, you can deliver specific creative to a targeted user at any given point in time. So FanDuel, for example, they can target women and they can target men at the same time with different creative, and we see great effectiveness with that.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'll sound like a broken record. I think just marketing to, along the lines of what Jeremy was saying, marketing through and product innovation that's really targeted at a casual user, whether that be women, something outside of the hardcore betting audience. And I think the only way you're going to do that is through innovation and real simplification. So a lot of work around the UX, the experience, like it's daunting to a casual user, and then all the friction at the top of the funnel, right, with getting somebody into the system with KYC and credit cards and all that, so there's going to just have to be a simplification, and I think it's going to come through new technology, low latency video, bet recommendation, contextual information, and just overall better UX innovation.
Do you think, and Bill, you can take this question, non-gambling influencers, brand ambassadors, have you guys ever looked into that as a way to drive non-core betting fans into the betting space?
Yeah, for sure. We probably work with, 5 or 6 influencers for watch-alongs on every one of our live events, because we're a big believer of watching within their communities. Yeah. They've built a following of their own fans, and so watching along something that they can add value to and commentating, quite frankly, in their own community is great. Like we work with Rob Pizzola from the Hammer for mini golf. I mean, this is somebody that just liked the sport originally. We invited him down. Some of his colleagues from the Hammer participated in a pro-am, and fast forward to today, he's like the commentator.
Wow.
And actually, this last event, we did it from live from the Hammer's studio in Toronto. We did remote commentary. And so influencers are important. We also think about it from a league perspective. I mentioned, we're launching a brand called Street, which is 3x3, FIBA sanctioned, with KG. You've got a Hall of Famer, somebody that has a following and has earned that following, and what we're producing is not really the big 3 side of 3x3, but the old N1 feel. Kind of bring it back to the neighborhoods, bring it back to the roots. Still professional, has all the integrity, et cetera, which there's a lot of work in all of our sports that, really require that integrity and operations behind the scenes. But, the influencer piece is there. We think about influencers or talent in okay, how do we take somebody and build a sport around them? How do we have them join our sport and talk along with it? And I think it's an important part. I think just doing an influencer campaign as a one-off on social is it's inefficient marketing, in my opinion. It's a flash in the pan, right? You get a little customers. It's not authentic. It doesn't work sustainably. And so, even we work closely with Better sometimes, and handshake bets have come down to some of our mini golf events, and there's just in all of those cases the data that we see, and partly why even Rob from the Hammer works with us is we help them over-index with our content because we're providing an opportunity that's actually like bringing them into the league. And they see their metrics increase because we're giving them a platform that makes sense for them. So it's a huge win-win if done right.
Yeah, Mike, we have 20 seconds, so obviously, in a classic panel forum, give you no time to answer a complicated question.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to.
Was
I
that
don't know if you have one. Yeah.
It's like a typical
The end.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you have two. Do you have any quick thoughts on it? Or?
No, I echo my partner's comments there.
Okay. Well, thank you, and we're going to end right on time. So thank you to the audience. Thank you for the panelists. It was a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.